Can you dig it? Bun! Bun! Who's the cat that won't come out when the danger's all about? Bun! Right on. You see, this cat Bun is one bad mother.
Shut your mouth!
I'm just talking about Bun.
I can dig it.
Can you dig it? He's a complicated man and no one understands him but his woman.
Bun. James Bond.
That's right, today on the SuperCaZt, it's James Bond and Living It. Can you dig it?
SuperCaZt, everybody. I'm your host, the man who put the super in SuperCaZt, the Super Foch, and as always, I'm joined by my good buddy and co-host, Steve Z, the man who put the Z in SuperCaZt.
And don't you forget it, I'm Z, Steve Z.
Nice one. And we are talking about, of course, as you know, because you clicked on the video, the great James Bond film, Live and Let Die. Very good film, classic. Can't wait to talk about it, but before we do, if you're new to the channel, thank you for stopping by, and please watch one of our other videos if you will, and if you like what you see here, make sure to give us a like, and follow us, and let us know what your favorite Bond is, and who knows, we may do an episode on it, we may have already done an episode on it. Thank you so much for joining us, and let's get to it, man.
The exciting 007 adventure of them all.
Yeah, let's get to it. Let's get to the bang, because I just now realized that this is the second film that we've done from this director, but also this writer. We actually did them in succession. We did Diamonds Are Forever just pretty recently, and now here we are with the follow-up film, Live and Let Die. And this movie, I've gone through so many different things with it. Like over the years, this was a film that I really liked. You introduced it to me.
Right.
And I remember just sitting down the first time, you're like, oh, check this out. And we watched the first 15, 20 minutes all the way up until like he's going into the meet Mr. Big, everything the first time.
Yep.
And I was like, this is really cool. And I ended up going to rent this movie. So this was one of I think it was the second Bond film I watched all the way through. And I loved it. I thought it was awesome. However, over the years, it's kind of waned for me. It's kind of lost its luster. That is, until the other night, I sat down and watched this film, and I was blown away. I think this movie has so much energy. I think Roger is great in it, and it's definitely a worthy film in this franchise.
Yeah, as you said, I grew up with this film. I pretty much could say that this was probably my favorite Bond film for many years, and still one of my favorites. I just love Roger Moore. I think he is brilliant in this movie. This movie is, it's an interesting Bond take because of, all the things that are in this. You get the voodoo stuff, you got the New Orleans stuff. It's just, there's a lot that some people like and some people don't, and there's a little bit of controversy, that sort of thing. But I think all in all, I think this film really holds up pretty well. Obviously it has a kick butt theme song, which we will talk about later on. But I had a lot of fun revisiting this film, And one of the biggest reasons is because of Roger Moore's performance. I think he is a fantastic James Bond. Um, he's probably my personally favorite of Bond. So, and I really think this and The Man with the Golden Gun are my two favorites of his. So, really enjoyed watching it the other night, and super excited to talk about it.
Yeah, let's get into it. It's so I guess if we want to put this movie in perspective, I just kind of talked about it a little bit. This is the follow-up to
Right.
Diamonds Are Forever, but it's the first one where they're trying to introduce Roger. He's as we know, the last time they tried that with George Lazenby, mixed results. I mean, yeah, that film now is awesome. We love it, but at the time when it came out, audiences were not digging it. But so Roger's coming in, and he's the fresh face, and I think he's really great in it. I know he gets better in other films. You mentioned this one and the next one are your two favorite by him. Roger, like I realized just a few years ago, I had to come to terms with this, that he has more solid Bond films in his mix than any of the other Bonds. Like, yeah, he's got a couple duds in there, and if you remember, we kind of were hard on Octopussy last time we covered it. I mean, so we made it look like we didn't really love Roger because we were like saying he's too old and everything. But in this film, he's perfect. He is so smooth. He's good at the dialogue as far as like being charming and cool at the same time, and that's the big thing. He is just so cool in this film. Like, I mean, I know Connery is cool, and I know Bronson he uses cool too, but this might be one of the coolest Bond performances out there. Is Roger in this film?
Yeah, he definitely commands your attention. You know, he is obviously dashing. He's got the looks and everything. And we'll talk about it. You know, Bond always gets the girl in the movies here. We'll talk about the lady that he gets later on, because I know you and I both have opinions on not necessarily the person, but just the character, and you know how she kind of fits within the story and everything. But I think when you're talking about Roger, when you're talking about James Bond, I think you have to have certain qualities, and the first has to be this suave persona, and I think Roger Moore has that in droves. I think he just, you know, he's just Mr. Cool. He's Mr. Smooth, you know. He's just fantastic to watch. So yeah, I think to say all of that is he's probably the most well-rounded Bond in the series, in my opinion.
Yeah, especially the humor. I think he does the jokes the best, and that's why they really lean into that the other films.
Yeah.
But this one stands out to me because I was mentioning his cool, but I love everything they did with his character to make it a little bit different. He smokes cigars in this film. He drinks bourbon, and we're talking like Jack. I mean, this man, he's just I can relate to him, and same time, he swaps out his gun for this huge. I don't even know if it's a Colt or a Magnum, but it just looks cool. So all those little things that he does, and it's a good contrast because he is a fish out of the water for most of this film. He's in a different world. He's from like European society. He's a globetrotter and everything, but he's not been in the hood. He's not been in Harlem and New Orleans and San Monique and so it's really cool. I like his performance, and it's very subtle, and that's probably why it really clicked for me this time, because I'm picking up on that more from actors. He's not over the top at all. He's not overplaying his hand. He's just cool, and he's given what he's got. He's like, how can I make this be Bond and authentic, but also how can I make it part of Roger Moore's, like, and make it authentic? So I think he's really good at doing that.
Yeah, and if you were to ask me, you know, what makes you love this film so much? And the first thing is the story. I love the story. I love the way this movie starts out, because it starts out as part of the story. This is not just a beginning just to, you know, have something cool. This actually is part of the story, where all these, you know, agents are being taken out, And so you get to go to these different places, and I love that every place seems different. And and I'm sure there are other Bonds, especially later on in the series, that are as dark, if not darker. But there's a lot of darkness in this film that I don't really remember up until this point.
Yeah, well, not in this series. This is like, I mean, we'll probably talk about this a few times, but this film is definitely an outlier in the series. I mean, you look at it, and it looks different. Like the aspect ratio is different. But like you're saying, that the dark themes, they stood out to me the first time I ever watched it. I remember you showed me this, and I was like, I'm kind of scared by this movie. This opening, we have 3 people get murdered. Boom, boom, boom. Yeah. And then we get into this awesome pre-title sequence with Live and Let Die. And it comes in so hot. This movie just, out of the gates, the first 5 minutes is just like your heart is going. You don't know what's going on. Your brain's barely making sense of it. It's so memorable. But at the same time, I love it because it's so cheap compared to a lot of the Bond opening sequences. Like you can tell this is a low budget film compared to, let's say, The Spy Who Loved Me, where he's skiing down a mountain at the beginning and jumping off a cliff. Right. We don't have anything like that. And in fact, we have no Bond. But at the same time, that darker theme that they establish right here, and sometimes comes back through the film, I think it's great how they just lay those seeds in this opening, and it goes into that song.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like that this film, and I'm sure we'll talk about it later on, but the pacing of this film is something that I didn't notice as much as a kid, but I think watching it the other night and just kind of taking some notes on it, man, this film goes fast. Yeah. I mean, this film moves just like the song. I mean, there's not a lot of just downtime, and I think that serves this film. I think because there's that dark plot, there's a lot more humor, but it doesn't come off as useless or needless humor. I think it really does kind of fit, especially at the beginning when M comes into his house. I mean, I was watching that and I never questioned that scene until the other night. I don't know what you were thinking, but I was like, when in the world would M come to Bond's house? I mean, maybe Moneypenny, sure, but why in the devil would M come with Moneypenny to his house? I just thought that was so ridiculous.
Yeah, I didn't think about that, but I'm glad you mentioned this scene because this is Roger's intro. This is the first time you see him. And you think about the other intros in the series. It's like you had Connery. He's sitting at the craps table, just being a man, being awesome, just being cool. Lazenby, he gets it awesome. Like, remember, his is all mysterious at first, then he gets the cool Bond, James Bond, gets in a fight and everything. Yep. And then we have Roger. He just wakes up, and that did not work for me because I was comparing it to other Bonds. Until this time, I did not. And to me, in this film, and just, I don't know, I guess I was just in the mood the other night. This really worked for me because this shows you this is the kind of guy Bond is. He just wakes up with these beautiful women in his bed. He's just, this is my life. And I thought it was just a flex move. I'm like, he doesn't have to show out. He's Bond, James Bond. He doesn't have to make a big show about it. So this opening scene actually really worked for me. Even though, like you're saying, it is very absurd that he would show up. And it's very absurd that they're making coffee like this. And just, it's silly.
Don't get me wrong. I love it. I love everything about this film. So when I say it's absurd in the best possible way. Because, again, nowhere in the world will your boss just come to your house and be like, hey, I need you to go and find these secret agents, see why they've been killed, kind of thing. But it kind of...
I guess it adds urgency to like something that is kind of low stakes for a Bond film. It's not like nuclear warheads or anything. It's just, these 3 guys are dead. Go investigate.
And that's the thing. I think that this story, I think one of the best parts about this film is the story. So you get this, kind of urgent situation where three of your fellow agents have been killed, and they don't know why. And I love the way that Roger Moore is the secret agent part of Bond. He is cool, he is smooth, but he's also confident. He is sure of himself. He's got everything under control from the jump. From the start of this film on. And that to me is why Roger Moore is one of the best Bonds, if not the best, because he just fits the character so well. He just really portrays this sometimes goofy, sometimes kind of silly, but yet badass guy at the same time. So it's just, and I know we're glowing on Roger Moore, but I just don't think you can say enough about him in this film.
A man comes. He travels quickly. He has purpose. He comes over water. He travels with others. He will oppose. He brings violence and destruction.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I love it how this film has these locations. You were getting into it a little bit. This one in particular, I mean, yeah, it says a little bit lower budget, but I really like the places they chose. It's more of an American feel to it. And I think that kind of fits with the vibe they're going for with, because, I mean, spoiler alert, even though it's not really a spoiler about the plot or anything, but this is them doing like Blaxploitation in Bond. And that could come off really terrible. Like, I mean, you got a bunch of British guys making a Blaxploitation film with a British guy starring, but I don't know. I think as far as the energy, and you've already mentioned the editing, I think they got really close to accomplishing it. And if you've got a great sound system, or you put some headphones on, you will be immersed in this 1973 world that Bond is going through, and it's such a fun ride. And I think it's just gets going from this get-go.
And that's it. I mean, you hit the nail on the head as far as I'm concerned, because every place feels different that he goes to. Every place has a mood and has just a look that is so incredibly unique to that area. You talked about going to, and probably obviously my favorite part is the New Orleans, Louisiana part, but then there's Mozambique and what's the other place? New York?
Yeah, Harlem. Yeah.
He goes to Harlem, and like I said, every place is different, and I think that they did a good job of representing those places as far as I'm concerned, and what they are. So you're in New Orleans, you're in Harlem, and so forth. So just really well made film. I mean, the story's great, the acting's great, but I think this film could be a little problematic with all the darkness and stuff going on, but I think they inject enough humor and enough action. We'll talk about the action here in a bit, that I really feel like all this other stuff that could make the film maybe not as good, I think did it perfectly.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. And you were just talking about the writing and everything. We've mentioned that a couple times. There is actually some scenes in here, I mean, if we're going to be honest, that they kind of don't work. But I think it doesn't bring the film down too much. And like, I think it had to do with like how this film was like thrown together a little bit. You could tell that the budget was a little bit down. I'm mainly talking about that scene in the airport. That always just drove me crazy. How it's like, what the heck? But other than that, I think the writing is great, and we get that in this scene where he's like flying over, and we are introduced to Solitaire. Solitaire's sitting there. She's talking about his approach. She's laying out the cards, predicting the future using her powers, and this gives us so much backstory and so much like exposition. But at the same time, how much film is actually being wasted? Like 30 seconds. And also, it's shot so cool, and it's got so much energy behind it that you're like, I'm all about this film. And I know I keep saying that. That's what this. I just had a ball with this film the other night, and I guess now let's get into Solitaire since I'm bringing her up.
Yeah. Of course, Jane Seymour. I think it's one of her first acting roles, and we'll talk about the agent lady here in a bit. But let's talk about Solitaire first, because it's an interesting character on its own. Obviously, sort of a fortune teller, I guess, kind of thing. And she's got this mystical power about her, and she's obviously serving the main protagonist, which is Kananga, and would really love to hear your thoughts on Kananga here in a bit. But as far as Solitaire is concerned and what happens with her character, what did you think of first Jane Seymour's performance and the way that character ends up, basically?
So this is a interesting part of the film to me, because I really like a lot of part of it. I think it works for the whole theme of her being able to predict the future. She's got this weird power. It kind of makes you think, like, in this film, are they trying to say like magic exists? Is voodoo a real thing? I guess we'll talk about that more with Baron Samedi later, but so I like that aspect of it. And I think Jane Seymour, she does pretty well for what she's got. But at the same time, I think just the way the character's written, and like I said, it's a little uneven at times. It's like, does she want to be rescued? Does she want to love Bond? Does she want to not? It's sort of conflicting. And I think that's one part of the film where I like parts of it, but parts of it just really don't work for me because it's so inconsistent.
You know, this is probably the first time I really thought about, as far as how did she get in this situation to begin with, because there really is no explanation to that end of, you know, why she's doing what she's doing. So you just kind of go with it, and then of course, spoiler alert, she ends up sleeping with Bond, and I guess her powers are gone. I don't know, but
yeah, I guess while we're talking about that, what do you think about that part? Do you think it's
that's kind of, it's.
Do you think it's kind of bad that Bond basically lies and cheats to make her lose her virginity?
I mean, you know, we're going down a rabbit hole here, and I don't want to be too critical on the film, because I do love the film. I don't think there was anything wrong as far as like illegal, like she's underage or anything like that. And I think she's attracted to Bond. I think, you know, first time she sees him, she kind of hints at it a little bit. I don't know, man. I struggled with that because I really because I knew we'd talk about this on the episode, because I really feel like this is something that, as a kid, it just kind of over your head and you don't really care. But as an adult, you're sitting there and you're like, okay, so she worked for Kananga, then she sleeps with Bond, and now she doesn't. So, like, you know, did he take the power away? Was she a virgin? I mean, I don't know, man. What was your takeaways on that?
Well, about the act. So I'm trying to see where they laid the seeds earlier in the film. Like, I remember he pulled over the card and he said, "We're gonna be lovers," and that, once again, that shows you that the cards kind of work and that there is some magic there.
Yep.
And he kind of plants a seed there. So I think he kind of puts the deck in his favor, play on words a little bit. And it's bad when you think about it in some sense, but I guess in one sense he does kind of save her from this life. You were trying to talk about it doesn't really explain how she got here, but it kind of does. His mother, her mother was the same thing before, and it's basically implied basically
I
that,
forgot about that.
He's the one that had sex with her to make her lose the power, and in turn that brought Solitaire. So he's basically raised her and brainwashed her and made her this. And that's now getting to, I'm starting to appreciate this character a little bit more now. What part is pretty cool about the film is how she changes, is how she kind of comes out of this sort of shackled version of herself that just uses her gifts for this guy he's pretty terrible once you get to know him. But she starts to change a little bit as the film comes on. Bond kind of brings out this new kind of energy in her, this new glow. So that's actually pretty cool, and I kind of get that from her performance.
Yeah, I agree with you. I don't think there's anything, as far as the Bond stuff is concerned, I don't think there's any sort of against her will stuff going on. And so, just for the sake of argument and for this episode, I agree with you. I think that everything you said, I totally agree 100%. I think that Jane Solitaire is probably not happy in her current situation with Kananga, and you just kind of have to be around the guy for about a minute to figure out why. I'm with you, man. I really do love Jane Seymour's performance, though, because when you first meet Solitaire, like, she's beautiful. I mean, she's gorgeous, definitely, and you're entranced, pun not intended. But then you find out the situation, and so I'm always kind of happy when she leaves Kananga and is with Bond, because again, I don't think it's against her will, and I think she's finally out of his trance or whatever.
That being said, nobody should just do this one day. Just get consent. No. Just kind of be smart about it. But I guess since we keep bringing him up, let's get into Kananga. Yaphet Kotto as Kananga, who we talked about him in Alien. He's an actor's actor, and I get that in this film, even though he's playing this one character is basically like a comic book gangster, and he's saying everything like a bunch of jive turkey stuff and just kind of silly stuff. He plays it very well. But in Kananga, I like his calmness, and at the same time, he's like underneath that surface. This dude is crazy. And I get that from this performance. Even though, like I said, he doesn't have a ton of screen time, I think the tone, he kind of goes against the tone a little bit sometimes. Man, Yaphet Kotto he kills it in this.
He kind of reminded me, and just go with me on this, but and I can't remember the actor's name, but in Tomorrow Never Dies, Elliot Carver. He kind of reminded him because he's trying to be this super cool hip guy, and he's kind of a psychopath. And I think Kananga is kind of the same way. I think he has this really, really demented, crazy side. I mean, he's holding a girl against her will, probably. So there's that. And then he turns into a totally different person. And he's definitely psychotic, I guess is a good word. And I think that a good Bond movie has to have a really good villain, and I really do like this villain as far as him being a good adversary to Bond. Is he the best fighter? No, but he has help with that. And we'll talk about the henchmen and stuff here in a second. But as a villain, I think he's really, really good. Is he my favorite of all time? Probably not. But I don't know. I just think he's portrayed really well by the actor. And I think he's a solid part of the film.
Yeah, definitely. And he, like you were saying, it's not the typical James Bond villain. He's not totally over the top, but I really like your connection there to Tomorrow Never Dies, even though we were going to try to avoid
I just thought of that, so I just had to say it.
In that film, in that one, Jonathan Pryce, he goes from sort of sane to very crazy by the end of the film. And we see the same thing here. Like, Yaphet Kotto starts as this calm, collected guy, but by the end, it almost seems like he's been drinking too much champagne or something. Like, he seems drunk.
He goes mad with power, I think.
I really like it, though, at the same time.
It's a relatively minor nuisance, in fact. But this gun, I find it particularly fascinating. What is it?
A shotgun, naturally, with compressed gas pellets.
Ingenious!
It's a good performance, and that's kind of like stands out to me about this film is they, like I said, it's not the big spectacle that we see in a lot of Bond films, and it's not the high stakes, but with what the budget they have and the sort of filmmaking techniques they have, they really make it work. And I think part of that is making like these memorable, larger than life characters, like
Mr. Big,
obviously Mr. Big, but also all these henchmen. I think they're awesome. Like, I would say like might be my favorite group of henchmen in any film. I mean, you got Teehee, the guy with the crazy claw. You got Baron Samedi, the voodoo man. It's just amazing. And then of course you got Whistler, who's just a big guy that talks really low. What do you think about these guys?
Oh man, just a lot of fun. I mean, they get absurd, especially with the guy with the claw thing. It gets absurd after a bit, but that's part of the charm of this film. I think is all the absurdity that you would think would be in real life. I think just adds to the fun of this film. I think that's one thing, at least from my experience, and I'm sure you can agree, is there's a lot of fun to be had with this film, and part of that is these characters, especially like you said, the Whisper guy. I just love him. He's just hilarious, and some of them are actually pretty good fighters and are pretty formidable for Mr. Bond a little bit. So I understand that there's a lot of darkness in this film, and there's a lot of kind of cringy stuff, but I think that if you watch this film, like I'm sure you did and I did, there's just a lot of fun to be had in this. And I think the bad guys especially, because like I said, a good story has to have good villains. It's just how it is. And I really like them in this film, and from Kananga on down. So yeah.
Yeah, and you just totally like got my idea out of my head and just said it. It's what makes this work is the conflicting tones, because you could go really super dark with this. You could go super serious because on the surface it's like that. It's talking a lot about death, and Kananga is a scary guy. Like, I mean, like we're saying, he's kidnapped this girl. He's most mad about her not losing her power, but because he couldn't be the one to take her power away. It's what he's really mad about. And then he slaps her in the face, and you're like, oh, this is serious. But then you got these comic book henchmen that are just so silly, but at the same time, they can be menacing. And I love how it juggles these two things of the camp and the seriousness. And I think this one gets that across better than almost any of them, because sometimes they deviate too much this way or too much that way. And that's what really works for this film about it. So I'm glad you brought that up. And I guess we get that a lot with the action sequences even. That these action sequences they're over the top, man. Like, we got a double-decker bus chase in this scene, in this movie. I used to love that scene as a kid. I mean, that just stood out to me so much. And the other scenes, they are not like the same spectacles you see in other Bond films, but some really cool chases. I mean, there's a chase with an airplane where he's just flying around. I mean, not flying, he's just driving it around. Yeah, but that boat one, I don't know. I really like the action sequences. What do you got to say about them?
Oh yeah, totally. That's another great part about this is. And this is, I mean, they're not silly per se, but there's a lot of silliness with some of these fight scenes. But yeah, the action scenes I think are really, really good. Sometimes they can be a little bit Batman and Robin-ish as far as, the absurdity goes. But I think it works for this film. I think you cannot really take this film super serious. And I think if you don't, there's a lot of fun to be had. And,
Yeah, definitely. I mean, just when he shows up at the base at the end, you got those guys. All the henchmen are wearing like red shirts. It just looks like you're saying Batman and Robin-ish. It's kind of silly.
Yeah.
But if you could roll with that and you could appreciate that, it's a really fun film. And I think the boat chase is kind of most evident of that. This is a sequence that I like it, but I don't like it at the same time. Like that's how I've always felt about it. Like I remember as a kid, sometimes I really was into it. Sometimes I would fast forward through it. Yeah. And the other night when I watched it, I'm definitely amazed at what they're doing. They are driving actual boats across the roads in front of cars. That's insane. So that part really appealed to me, but it kind of derails this awesome pacing we had going in the film to that point. Like the movie was speeding along, and then we have this 15-20 minute boat chase, and Bond's not saying anything for most of it. Roger's just basically checked out, and I don't know. What do you think about that part?
Yeah, I kind of agree on that. I like the spectacle of it all. I think it looks really interesting because it's like how they pull that off, so well. But I kind of agree with you. I feel like it does kind of slow the movie down just a tad, not too much. It doesn't take me out of the film that bad. But I think just the spectacle of it all, I don't know. I just, all the crazy stuff that people might have a problem with or whatever, I absorbed last night and or the other night, and I was just like, man, this is crazy. I mean, where else would you see a scene like that in any other kind of movie other than a Bond film? And so if you're not familiar with this kind of stuff, and you're not a Bond fan, you've been living wrong, because that's what it's about. And I mean, it's not my favorite part as far as the film as a whole, but I think it does work just because of, like I said earlier, all the other crazy stuff going on. I mean, the way Kananga dies is so absurd.
Yeah, we'll get into that in a second. I'm not done with this boat stuff yet.
Go ahead.
Yeah, but I agree with you. Like the stunts are cool. Even some of the gags kind of work. I think there might be a few too many gags. I mean, we only have to see them like run through so many weddings and end up in so many people's pools or something like that. But I think, once again, a controversial part of the film that I think it's finally worked for me this time after watching this so many times and hating this character so much. But they hold this scene together because, like I said, Bond's not talking. So we get a lot of talking from this random character that gets thrown in here. It becomes a J.W. Pepper movie here for about 15 minutes. And
I love it. I love that guy.
Clifton James as J.W. Pepper.
Like, I just love the guy. I think it's hilarious. I know he kind of probably gets on people's nerves, but I don't know. He just makes me happy. It's just, and him, and I would love to see a buddy cop movie with him and Roger Moore, because it'd just be so funny. But yeah, I love their construct, because they couldn't be any more opposite to each other, and I think they play off really well. And, his comedic timing is really good. And I don't know. I mean, I could see where he would rub people the wrong way, and he's obviously ignorant. He's, not the nicest guy in the world. But I don't know. I just think he's really silly, and I just always enjoyed him in this movie and the original Superman 2.
Yeah, and like I said, if you don't like him, that's fine. Because I hated this character up until this time watching it.
You did.
This time watching it, I think I finally, it clicked for me. I was just like, this guy is a buffoon. He is a clown, but he loves it so much. Like, I love that scene where he's licking his chops. He's like, oh, we're going to get him. We're gonna get the guy, like he called up Billy Bob.
Yep.
Billy Bob's gonna get him. Oh, he's gonna get him. I just love how excited he is and how he's into it. It's like a kid being a cop. And I didn't get that over the topness that they're going for. That this is not like a real character here. This is a weird sheriff guy that they just made up, and they're doing it to make fun of sheriffs and people like this that are in the world.
Right.
That totally went over my head as a kid. I just thought he was just a redneck that got on my nerves. But now I'm like, oh, this is hilarious. This is great.
Yeah.
And he makes this part because otherwise this part would just go on forever. But he kind of adds some variety. He adds some humor. And some of the dialogue they added in for like the CB coming through is like, it's hilarious. Like, you just go back and watch that part and you'll just be cheered up.
Yeah, and I think what works the best for this is, like you said, it's not like he's in the movie a whole lot. Just one or two scenes, and it's over the top, it's silly, it's crazy, but, it's not more than 5-10 minutes of the entire film. So I think adding that just... because, again, I think there's a lot of humor in this film, probably more than most Bonds even, just because I think of all the dark stuff that they have to deal with. And I think that was a genius, move to add the humor, because it does offset some of the dark stuff. I mean, it's not super graphic or anything like that when I talk about the dark stuff. If you haven't seen this film, I mean, there's no goriness or anything like that. But I think up until this film, I mean, these films have all been pretty lighthearted, and I think this is probably tackled some more serious issues than before. So I think when you have these scenes like with J.W. Pepper, I think that's what makes them work, is because they're just kind of a palate cleanser to all this other stuff. Yeah,
I mean, because even like the ending of it, it's a really cool action part. Like, he tosses gasoline on a guy and it's a huge explosion, but that's pretty dark. And it comes in this finale where we're going to see our main girl. She's about to get sacrificed. That's freaky. And apparently they used a real snake there, and it scared. That fear that she has is real. That she's freaking out.
Oh, I'm sure.
So that's kind of messed up, but like you're saying, gets kind of dark here. And Baron Samedi, this guy freaked me out as a kid. I don't know about you, because we see his skull get shot off, and then he comes back out of the ground, and then he comes back at the end. It's so creepy, but like you're saying, they sprinkle enough absurdity in there to kind of make it work and make it James Bond. And I don't know, the more I talk about this movie, the more I really love it. The tone is perfect. There is some stuff that doesn't work for me, and I've mentioned a little bit already. And one of these that still doesn't sit well with me is the performance by Gloria Hendry as Rosie Carver.
Yeah, I just, and I have nothing against the person. I'm sure she's a lovely woman. If she's still with us, I don't know. But I hate this character. And I don't mean like I hate,
Well, she's just poorly written and poorly acted. I think that's the big thing. I think.
Oh my gosh, she was so annoying. Same thing with this. I mean, like, I tried so hard to like this character. I don't think she's like the worst character ever, and she is sweet, and I understand, she's doing her best. But come on, because. And I think the thing that really still seals it for me is they try to make a romance out of Bond and her. And I'm like, that...
Well, I don't think they do, actually.
Well, it's not like he's using her. I get that. He does use her.
Yeah, I mean, he's been tipped off at that point.
But even still, I just don't... That's the one part of this film that has always just stuck with me. And I understand, and it's not a rape thing or anything like that, but it's so unneeded as far as I'm concerned. But I get why he did it, whatever. But
it seems like filler in the movie. It doesn't add much to it. Like you said, I mean, she's a beautiful lady, and I mean, she's a Playboy bunny, I think, before this. But the character is not written well, because she's supposed to be a double agent, but I mean, what kind of agent is she? She's scared of snakes. She scared of hats. She's not a very good agent for one thing, so that the writing's not doing her any favor. She nearly kills Coral Jr. randomly. She just comes up with a gun, and then Bond's like, "Hey, this is my friend Coral Jr." I don't know why he does that, but
well, here's my.
I think they try to add some depth with the whole thing that maybe somebody's like manipulating her to make her do this. But it just comes across weird whenever she's acting scared of this scarecrow. It's not believable. But I do like the scene where Bond kind of turns it on her and says like, "Yeah, I need you to tell me the truth here."
Yeah.
And he gets super cold. So I think I felt bad for him because she is, and once again, she's probably a great person, like you said. But her acting is so bad, and his is actually, he's making up for it to try to make the scene work. I've never seen anybody act that hard to try to make up for the other person's just bad acting in that scene.
Well, see, and this just popped into my head while you were talking. We talked earlier about the way that Roger Moore portrays James Bond. Everything he does is just cool, calculated, awesome. And Susie is the complete opposite of that. So the only thing that I can rationalize with that is they had to make Susie the complete opposite of Bond because she's not really the romantic connection that Solitaire ends up being. So what's the angle? Well, I mean, if you already got somebody that's smooth and awesome and cool, the only thing it is she's got to be the way she is. That's my theory for this film. Does it make the character any better? Not really, no. But I think that's what is, in my opinion, their rationale, is that we've got this guy that's super, super cool and everything, and so this girl has to be, she tries her hardest. I mean, she's not a complete whip, but, when the tough got going, she didn't, deliver until Bond was like, nope, you got to do this. So that's my rationale for that character. Again, does it make her better? Not really, no. But it is what it is.
Yeah, and that we've spent way too long talking about this character. Yeah, so sorry for that. It's the film. Other than that, like going back to what makes it work, it flows so well. It's a joy. The themes, they actually come through. This is one of the few Bond films that actually has a theme, and I feel death just draped all over this film. Yes, it has some absurd moments in there, obviously we've been talking about, but I don't know, it still ends with darkness. It ends with Baron Samedi sitting there laughing at you, and yeah, the music comes in, it's awesome. It makes you feel cool, it's like James Bond's going to return, but at the same time, Bond, death, and destruction follow everywhere he goes. I mean, that's what Solitaire says. Everywhere he goes, he leaves chaos. He's blowing up labs. He's killing people. And it doesn't bother him. And I think they get that coldness across in this character. And this theme of just death being there, it works. And same time, I think the absurdity of this film works. I think it's just a cool film and a great introduction for Roger Moore, man.
I think you could compare a lot of Bond movies together. You could say, this one's kind of like this one. I don't think you could do that with Live and Let Die with any other movie. Maybe Skyfall. They talk about death in that one. In that one, they talk about death.
Yeah, that's the one I thought of too that also has a theme. So
maybe a little bit, but I really feel like this movie is kind of on its own with the way it presented, because like you said, the attention to death and darkness, the cult stuff and the snake stuff, and I could see where that would turn a lot of people off. My wife hates snakes and wouldn't want to do that at all. So I get that, but I kind of dig it. I kind of dig the darkness. I think that's one of my favorite parts about this film is the darkness, because especially when you're watching this film for the first, you're like, how's Bond going to get out of this? I mean, you're talking about supernatural stuff. You know, this is not just a guy with a gun that he's dealing with. So I think it's one of the I think it's a well-written film, aside from the double agent thing. And I really think that they present a very unique take on the Bond story as far as him going after the bad guys and up against a real threat. And I think that's just what makes this film still to this day one of my favorite films in the Bond series as a whole.
Yeah, I mean, it's got its highs, it's got its lows, but it's still really cool how it pulls off this Blaxploitation Bond thing, and they do a lot with just their lower budget. Like I said, it's really well made film, pretty well directed, considering I think that they were kind of making up parts of it as they went, and it kind of from here it went into Man with a Golden Gun, and I guess we'll talk about that one another time.
Well, that wasn't very fun. Now what are you doing?
Just being disarming, darling.
On the next episode of the SuperCaZt.
Yep, it's from this great series In the Line of Duty. Watching the second one of those, Yes Madam, starring Michelle Yeoh and Cynthia Rothrock. So 2 women, and they are kicking butts.
On the next episode of the SuperCaZt.
I want to finish by thanking everybody for listening to the SuperCaZt again. Be sure to check out our channel and subscribe to our channel, of course. And share it with your friends, because that's the best part. And we really love the comments that you guys give us. That really helps the video and the algorithm. And it gives us something to talk about. We don't want this to be like a 2-person conversation. We want this conversation to be open to many. So please do that. Share with your friends, all that good stuff. Thanks, man. This has been a lot of fun. I'm glad we got to watch this one again.
Definitely, man. For Steve Z, I'm the Super Foch. We'll see you guys next time on the SuperCaZt.